You see, we've been taught to chase money. We've been conditioned to believe that wealth comes from grinding harder, working longer hours, and pushing ourselves beyond our limits. But here's the truth that ancient wisdom keepers have known for millennia. Money isn't something you chase. It's something that chases you when you learn to match its frequency. Think about it for a moment. Have you ever noticed how certain people just seem to be in the right place at the right time? How opportunities flow to them like water finding its natural course. That's not luck, that's resonance. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to attract money effortlessly while others work themselves to exhaustion and barely make ends meet? What if I told you that the difference has nothing to do with how hard you work, how smart you are, or even how much you sacrifice? What if the secret to wealth has been hidden in plain sight all along, vibrating at a frequency most people never learn to tune into? But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. Now, let me share something that might completely shift how you see money forever. Beyond the physical coins and paper bills, beyond the numbers in your bank account, there exists an energetic reality that governs abundance. Money in its truest form is not what you think it is. The dollar in your pocket, the cryptocurrency in your digital wallet, even the gold in a vault somewhere, these are just echoes. They're physical manifestations of something far more powerful, something magnetic and alive that responds not to your effort, but to your alignment. Has this ever happened to you? You desperately need money, you stress about it, you lose sleep, worrying about bills, and somehow the harder you try, the more it seems to slip away. But then, in moments when you're relaxed, when you're feeling good, when you've somehow let go of the desperation, that's when unexpected checks arrive, when opportunities knock, when abundance finds its way to you. That's not coincidence. That's the wealth frequency at work. What I'm about to share with you goes against everything you've been taught about money. It challenges the hustle culture, the grind mentality, the idea that prosperity requires sacrifice. Because the truth is, you don't need to force what you were born to attract. There's a sacred resonance connecting you to abundance right now, in this very moment, and most people go their entire lives never knowing it exists. Stay with me until the end, because understanding this one principle could be the difference between a lifetime of financial struggle and finally stepping into the flow of effortless prosperity. The wealth vibration isn't mystical. Nonsense. It's a recognizable pattern that operates whether you believe in it or not. And here's where most people get it completely wrong. They think abundance needs to be earned. They believe that if they just work hard enough, save enough, sacrifice enough, then maybe, just maybe, they'll finally deserve prosperity. But that's the trap. That's the fog of scarcity talking, and it's kept more people broke than any economic crisis ever could. Let me be crystal clear about something. Scarcity is not the truth of reality. It's a distortion, a false lens through which we've been programmed to view the world. Think about nature for a moment. Does the ocean worry about running out of waves? Does the sun ration its light because it fears there won't be enough for tomorrow? Abundance is the natural state of the universe, and scarcity is just the fog that blocks us from seeing it. The real transformation happens when you realize that prosperity isn't something you earn through struggle. It's something you unlock through alignment. Those people you see living in overflow, the ones who seem to have cracked some invisible code, they haven't just mastered budgets and investment strategies. Sure, they might understand money management, but that's not their secret. Their real power lies in something deeper, something most financial advisors will never tell you about because they don't even know it exists themselves. They've attuned themselves to what I call the codes of creation, and Instead of grasping desperately at wealth like most people do, they've simply remembered how to let it flow to them naturally. This is where your entire relationship with money can shift, because what you're dealing with isn't just numbers on a screen or pieces of paper in your wallet. Behind every dollar, every transaction, every financial exchange, there's something far more fundamental at play. Ancient wisdom traditions understood this deeply. They knew that the universe doesn't communicate through words or logical reasoning. The universe speaks in vibration, in frequency, in energetic signatures that most of us have forgotten how to read. Every single transaction that happens in your life exists first as an energy pattern before it ever materializes into physical form. Before that unexpected bonus appears in your account, before that business opportunity knocks on your door, before that financial breakthrough manifests, it exists as a frequency pattern in the quantum field of possibility. And here's what might shake your understanding of money to its core. Your current financial situation right now, whatever it looks like, is a perfect mirror of your wealth frequency. It's reflecting back to you the subtle vibration you've been emitting through your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotional states, and your unconscious programming. This is the forgotten currency of the universe that nobody talks about. We've become so obsessed with the physical manifestation of money that we've completely ignored the energetic blueprint that creates it. Your bank account isn't the cause of your financial reality. It's the effect. The cause lives in your frequency, in the vibrational signature you carry every single day. When you worry about bills, you emit one frequency. When you feel grateful for what you have, you emit another. When you believe deep down that you'll never have enough, that belief creates a specific energetic pattern that the universe responds to with mathematical precision. Now, I want to go even deeper into this because understanding the concept intellectually is one thing, but actually shifting your frequency is where the real magic happens. Most people hear this information and think, okay, so I just need to think positive thoughts about money and everything will change. But it's not that simple. Your conscious thoughts are just the surface level. Beneath them lie layers of conditioning, ancestral patterns, and subconscious beliefs about worthiness and abundance that have been running your financial life on autopilot for years, maybe even decades. The real journey begins when you start recognizing these hidden patterns, when you catch yourself in the act of emitting scarcity frequency, and when you learn to consciously tune yourself back to abundance. This isn't about forcing positivity or denying your current reality. It's about recognizing that your current reality is changeable because it was created by frequency. And frequency can be shifted. Write in the comments, I'm ready to shift my frequency, if this is resonating with you so far. So how exactly do you shift this frequency? How do you move from the vibration of lack to the vibration of abundance when your bank account is screaming scarcity at you? This is where the real work begins, and I'm going to break down the hidden mechanics that make this transformation possible. There are 4 fundamental principles that govern this alignment, and once you understand them, you'll see why some people seem to magnetically pull wealth toward them while others repel it without even realizing what they're doing. The first principle is resonance. Think of yourself as a tuning fork. When you strike a tuning fork tuned to a specific note, other tuning forks in the room, tuned to that same frequency, will begin to vibrate in sympathy, even without being touched. This is resonance in action. Your energy field works exactly the same way with abundance. When your internal state matches the frequency of prosperity, the universe has no choice but to respond in kind. But here's the catch. You can't fake this resonance. You can't just say affirmations while your entire being is vibrating with fear and doubt. True resonance requires your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs to align into a coherent signal that broadcasts, I am abundant. The second principle is amplification. Every aligned thought, every moment you hold yourself in the frequency of wealth, strengthens your signal. It's like building muscle. The first time you go to the gym, you might struggle to lift even light weights. But with consistency, those same weights become effortless, and you progress to heavier ones. Your wealth frequency works the same way. Each time you choose an abundant thought over a scarcity thought, each time you feel gratitude instead of lack, you're amplifying your prosperity signal. You're creating a more powerful attraction field that pulls opportunities, resources and wealth toward you with increasing momentum. If this resonated with you, if something shifted inside as you watched, consider subscribing to this channel. I'm here creating content that challenges conventional money beliefs and reveals the deeper truths about abundance. Don't miss what's coming next. But here's where most people fall off the path, and this brings us to the third principle: persistence. Maintaining your wealth frequency during challenging times is the real test. Anyone can feel abundant when money is flowing, when bills are paid, when life is smooth. The real power reveals itself when circumstances try to pull you back into fear, when unexpected expenses hit, when income dips, when the outer world seems to contradict everything you're trying to build internally. That's when persistence becomes your superpower. This isn't about denying reality or pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to let temporary circumstances dictate your permanent frequency. And finally, there's transmission. This is the principle that most people never even consider, yet it's perhaps the most powerful of all. As your frequency strengthens and stabilizes, you naturally begin broadcasting this energy into your environment. You become a walking transmission tower for prosperity consciousness. People feel different around you. Opportunities start showing up in the strangest ways. Conversations lead to connections you never expected. This isn't woo-woo magic. It's energetic influence. You're literally changing the field around you, and that field responds by reorganizing circumstances in your favor. Let me give you a real example of how this works in practice, because theory without application is just entertainment. There was a woman, an artist, who spent years struggling to sell her work. She had talent, she had technique, she had everything except financial success. Every day she'd wake up stressed about money, checking her bank account with dread, wondering how she'd pay rent. Her art reflected this anxiety, beautiful, but somehow lacking that spark that makes people want to own it. Then something shifted. She stopped focusing on the money and instead started losing herself completely in the creative process. She'd enter these states of pure flow where hours would pass like minutes, where she wasn't thinking about bills or rent or selling anything. She was just creating from a place of pure joy, and that's when everything changed. In those moments of creative flow, she had unconsciously aligned herself with the exact vibration of universal abundance. She wasn't trying to force anything. She wasn't desperate or grasping. She was simply being in complete harmony with her highest expression. The mysterious part: opportunities started appearing out of nowhere. A stranger walked into her studio and bought her entire collection. An unexpected commission arrived exactly when she needed it most. Gallery owners who'd ignored her for years suddenly reached out. She hadn't changed her marketing strategy. She hadn't networked differently. She had simply shifted her frequency, and the universe responded accordingly. This demonstrates something crucial about how wealth frequency actually operates in the real world. It's not about working harder or being more strategic, though those things certainly have their place. It's about finding that state of alignment where effort becomes effortless, where you're so in tune with your authentic expression that abundance has no choice but to flow through you. What's fascinating is that she didn't even know what she was doing from a technical standpoint. She wasn't consciously thinking, I'm going to align my frequency with abundance now. She just followed what felt good, what lit her up, what made her lose track of time. And in doing so, she stumbled onto the most powerful wealth-attracting force in the universe: authentic alignment. Drop a comment below saying, "I choose alignment," if you're starting to see how this works. Now here's where this gets even more profound, because what I'm about to share with you reveals the internal architecture of wealth consciousness itself. You see, most people think prosperity is this one-dimensional thing. You either have money or you don't. But true abundance operates through multiple dimensions simultaneously, like a temple with different chambers, each one holding a specific key to unlocking your financial potential. Your prosperity consciousness isn't just a single switch you flip on or off. It's an entire inner landscape with distinct territories that need to be activated and harmonized. At the foundation lies worthiness, which is your ability to recognize that abundance isn't something you need to earn or prove yourself worthy of. It's your divine birthright simply by virtue of existing. Most people carry deep-seated beliefs that they're not good enough, smart enough, or deserving enough for real wealth. And that belief alone creates an invisible ceiling on what they can attract. Until you recognize worthiness as your natural state, you'll always be fighting against yourself. Then there's expectation, which is completely different from hope or wishing. Expectation is the unshakable certainty that abundance is already on its way to you. It's knowing, not hoping. It's the same energy you have when you order something online. You don't sit around wondering if it'll arrive. You expect it. You plan for it. You make space for it. That certainty is a frequency in itself, and it pulls your desires into physical form with magnetic force. Gratitude operates as a multiplier in this system. When you genuinely appreciate what you already have, you send a signal to the universe that says, "I recognize abundance when I see it," and the universe responds by sending more of what you're appreciating. But this isn't fake gratitude or forcing yourself to be thankful when you're actually resentful. It's authentic recognition of the wealth that's already present in your life, even if it doesn't look like the number you want in your bank account yet. Vision is your ability to see beyond current circumstances and hold an ethereal dream of what's possible. This isn't daydreaming or fantasy. It's the capacity to perceive potentials that don't yet exist in physical form, but are completely real in the quantum field of possibility. Every invention, every breakthrough, every transformation in human history started as someone's vision before it became reality. Your financial future works the same way. Love might seem out of place in a conversation about money, but it's actually one of the most powerful wealth attractors there is. When you can give with an open heart, when generosity flows naturally from you, you activate a circulation pattern that guarantees return. Closed hearts create closed wallets. Open hearts create open channels for abundance to flow in both directions. Peace is the frequency of allowing. When you're calm, centered, and tranquil about money, you stop pushing and forcing and struggling. In that peaceful state, wealth can find you because you're not blocking it with anxious, desperate energy. And finally, there's unity, the recognition that you're not separate from the source of all abundance. You're not asking some external force for money. You're remembering that you are a channel for infinite prosperity. Let me tell you about someone who proved this principle under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. There was a man named Theodore who had everything you could measure as wealth: properties, investments, luxury, comfort, all of it. Then nature struck with devastating force and took it all away in a single night. Everything gone. Most people in that situation would collapse into despair, convinced their life was over. But Theodore had something that the storm couldn't touch: his inner wealth consciousness. His external world was in ruins, but his internal frequency remained unshaken. And here's what happened that defies conventional logic. Within weeks, signs of restoration began appearing. A silver coin in the rubble, a merchant offering partnership, a forgotten debt repaid. These weren't coincidences. They were manifestations of his inner prosperity consciousness, reaching out through the frequency field to restore what belonged to his vibration. This story reveals the most important truth about wealth that most people never grasp. Your physical riches are just shadows cast by the light of your inner prosperity. The real treasure isn't in your bank account, it's in your consciousness. Theodore's money was gone, but his millionaire mindset remained intact, and that mindset automatically began reconstructing the external reality to match its internal blueprint. Type inner wealth in the comments if you're recognizing that true abundance starts from within. What most people don't realize is that you're walking around every single day as a living, breathing magnet for money. Not metaphorically, literally. Your thoughts, emotions, and beliefs are creating an actual magnetic field around you that either pulls financial opportunities toward you or repels them, like the wrong ends of two magnets pushing against each other. This isn't some new age concept I'm making up. Physics has proven that everything is energy, and energy creates fields of influence. Your consciousness is no exception. But here's where it gets fascinating and a little uncomfortable. This magnetic field operates on three distinct levels, and most people are only aware of one of them. The surface level is your conscious thoughts, the things you deliberately think about money throughout the day. When you say to yourself, "I want to be wealthy," or "I need more income," those thoughts do create a frequency, but they're just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath your awareness, running silently in the background like software on your computer, are your subconscious beliefs about money. These were installed mostly during childhood, formed through what you witnessed, what you were told, and what you experienced around finances. If you grew up hearing, "Money doesn't grow on trees," or "We can't afford that," or watching your parents stress over bills, those experiences created subconscious programming that's still broadcasting a signal today, even if you're not consciously thinking those thoughts. And deeper still, beneath even the subconscious, lie what I call soul patterns. These are the ancestral imprints, the karmic relationships with abundance that transcend your current lifetime. I know this might sound far out to some of you, but stay with me, because this explains why some people can do everything right on the conscious level and still struggle financially. They're battling programming that didn't even originate in this lifetime. The good news? All three levels can be reprogrammed once you become aware of them. The real transformation begins when you understand that what you think is blocking your wealth probably isn't what's actually in the way. Most people believe they have real, solid obstacles preventing their prosperity. They look at their circumstances and see mountains: no college degree, too much debt, wrong location, not enough connections, too old, too young, wrong industry, bad economy. And these seem so real, so insurmountable, that they never question whether these barriers actually have the power they're giving them. Here's the hidden truth that changes everything. These obstacles are illusions. They're morning mist masquerading as mountains. And the moment you walk toward them with complete faith, they dissolve. Think about how many times in your life you've worried about something that seemed huge, only to look back later and realize it was nothing. That's because fear magnifies illusions, while faith reveals truth. If this video opened something new in your understanding of money and abundance, show it with a like. That simple gesture tells me this message is landing, and it helps this reach others who need to hear it right now. The primary illusions that trap most people in financial limitation all follow the same pattern. Unworthiness whispers that you're not good enough for wealth, so you subconsciously sabotage opportunities. Scarcity convinces you there's not enough to go around, creating competition and hoarding mentality. Separation makes you believe you're disconnected from universal abundance, like you're outside looking in at a party you weren't invited to. Timing tells you that it's not the right moment, that you need to wait, that someday, but not today, is when prosperity will arrive. Complexity makes wealth seem so difficult and intricate that you feel overwhelmed before you even start. Then there's criticism, which keeps you frozen because you're more concerned about what others will think than about your own expansion. And finally, disbelief itself becomes the ultimate blocker, causing you to doubt the very principles that could set you free. These 7 illusions work together to create an invisible prison that feels completely real from the inside. But here's what happens when you truly understand their nature. The prison has no walls. You've been free the entire time, just convinced otherwise. The real journey isn't about breaking through obstacles. It's about recognizing that the obstacles were never solid to begin with. Every person who's achieved extraordinary wealth has at some point walked through what seemed impossible to others. They didn't have secret advantages you don't have. They simply stopped believing in the reality of the mountains blocking their path. They treated limitations as suggestions rather than laws. And the universe, which responds to consciousness rather than circumstances, had no choice but to reorganize reality around their conviction. What's emerging now is a complete picture of how wealth actually works behind the scenes, beyond the surface strategies everyone talks about. Your magnetic field is broadcasting constantly, drawing or repelling based on all 3 levels of consciousness. And what you think are immovable obstacles are actually just tests to see if you'll believe in them or walk right through them. Right, I see through the illusion in the comments if this perspective shift is landing for you. So, if these wealth blockers are illusions and your magnetic field is what actually determines your financial reality, then what's the fastest way to shift that field? This is where we enter territory that's going to challenge everything you thought you knew about money. Because the answer isn't what most people expect. The most powerful way to activate wealth frequency isn't through receiving more, it's through giving more. And I know that sounds completely backwards to your logical mind, especially if you're currently in a place of financial stress. But stay with me, because what I'm about to explain reveals one of the most counterintuitive truths about how abundance actually operates. There's an ancient story that demonstrates this principle perfectly. During a devastating drought, when crops were failing and people were desperate, there was a farmer who made a decision that seemed absolutely insane to everyone around him. While his neighbors were hoarding their remaining seeds, terrified of running out, this farmer took his last handful and shared them with those who had nothing left at all. His family thought he'd lost his mind. His community whispered that desperation had broken him. But something remarkable happened that nobody could explain with conventional logic. Rain began falling on his fields, and only his fields, creating this perfect circle of abundance while the land around him stayed dry. It continued for days, transforming his soil into rich, fertile ground while teaching everyone who witnessed it a truth that defies ordinary economics. What that farmer understood, either consciously or intuitively, is that giving isn't loss. It's the actual mechanism through which abundance multiplies itself. Think about blood in your body for a moment. If blood stopped circulating, if it just pooled in one place and refused to move, you'd die. The flow is what creates life. Money operates on the exact same principle. When you hold it too tightly, when you grip it out of fear, when you refuse to let it circulate, it stagnates. It loses its vital force. But when you allow it to flow, when you participate in the natural rhythm of giving and receiving, you activate a multiplication pattern that's built into the fabric of reality itself. But here's the critical distinction that most people miss, and this is why broke people giving away money they can't afford doesn't magically make them wealthy. It's not just about the action of giving, it's about the consciousness behind the giving. When you give from a place of sacrifice, from depletion, from a feeling of, I can't afford this, but I should do it anyway. You're actually reinforcing scarcity consciousness. You're sending a signal that says, I don't have enough, and the universe responds accordingly by creating more situations where you don't have enough. True sacred giving comes from abundance consciousness, even if your bank account doesn't reflect abundance yet. It's giving from the recognition that you're connected to an infinite source, so there's no actual loss possible. The second principle that transforms giving into a wealth multiplier is releasing all attachment to how or when it returns. The moment you give with the expectation of getting something back, you've created a transaction, not a gift. And that expectation creates energetic resistance in the flow. It's like trying to force water uphill. The universe wants to respond to your generosity, but your expectation blocks the natural pathways through which abundance could return to you. When you give freely, with no strings attached, with no mental calculation of what you're owed, you open yourself to receive from infinite directions in infinite ways. Then there's alignment with your values. Not all giving is created equal in terms of energetic impact. When you direct your resources toward causes, people, or purposes that genuinely resonate with your highest values, you amplify the frequency of that giving exponentially. It's the difference between mechanical charity and passionate contribution. One is obligation, the other is inspiration. And the universe responds to the frequency of inspiration with opportunities you couldn't have orchestrated yourself. But the deepest principle, the one that unlocks the full power of sacred giving, is understanding oneness. In ultimate truth, there is no other to give to. Every act of generosity is you giving to yourself in the larger field of consciousness. When you truly grasp this, giving becomes effortless because you recognize that whatever you release into circulation must return to you by the very nature of the unified field we all exist within. What's starting to emerge here is a complete reframe of how prosperity actually functions. It's not about accumulation and protection. It's about circulation and trust. The farmer didn't hoard his way to abundance, he gave his way there. And that same principle is available to you right now, regardless of your current circumstances. Type, I choose to circulate in the comments if you're ready to shift from hoarding to flowing. Understanding circulation is just the beginning, because even when you're willing to give and receive, there's still something most people get fundamentally wrong about how wealth actually moves. They're fighting against the current instead of flowing with it. Let me paint you a picture that'll make this crystal clear. Imagine a fisherman who spends every single day battling against a mighty river's current. He's exhausted, his arms ache constantly, and despite all his effort, he barely catches enough to survive. He genuinely believes this struggle is necessary, that this is just what fishing requires. Then one day, an old mariner appears and watches him work. Without saying a word, this weathered sailor gestures for the fisherman to follow him onto the water, and there, right in the middle of those same currents the fisherman had been fighting, the mariner shows him something that changes everything. He demonstrates how to read the water's natural patterns, how to position the boat not in opposition to the river's will, but in perfect harmony with its flow. Suddenly, nets that were empty are overflowing with abundance, and the fisherman realizes he'd been creating his own struggle the entire time. This is exactly what most people are doing with money. They're rowing upstream with all their might, convinced that more effort equals more results. But wealth doesn't respond to struggle. It responds to alignment. The universe has a natural current of abundance flowing constantly, and your only job is to position yourself in that flow, not to force it, not to control it, not to make it happen through sheer willpower, just to align. But alignment isn't passive. It's not sitting around waiting for money to fall from the sky. It's a very specific energetic positioning that requires you to embody certain states of being. The first state is receptivity, and this is where most people fail before they even start. They say they want abundance, but their entire being is clenched shut like a fist. Receptivity means making yourself an open vessel, willing and ready to receive whatever the universe wants to bring you. It means letting go of rigid ideas about how money should arrive and being genuinely available to unexpected pathways. Then there's expectancy, which I touched on earlier, but needs to be emphasized again because it's that powerful. This isn't hoping or wishing or crossing your fingers. Expectancy is maintaining unwavering faith that abundance is already in motion toward you. It's the calm certainty that what you need is on its way, even when you can't see it yet. Most people waver. They believe one day and doubt the next. But that inconsistency disrupts the current. Expectancy requires steady, unshakable knowing. Allowance is where control addicts really struggle. And if you're being honest with yourself, you probably have more control addiction than you realize when it comes to money. Allowance means releasing your grip on how things unfold. It means trusting that prosperity knows the best route to reach you, even if that route looks nothing like what you planned. When you try to micromanage the universe, when you insist things happen your way or not at all, you create resistance in the natural flow. Allowance is the art of letting wealth find its own path to you. Patience is the state that keeps you centered while the invisible machinery of manifestation does its work. Things are always happening in the quantum field before they become visible in physical reality. There's a lag time, a gestation period, and most people give up right before breakthrough because they can't hold the frequency through the waiting. Patience isn't passive resignation, it's active trust. It's knowing that timing operates according to universal principles, not your anxiety. And detachment might be the most misunderstood state of all. People think detachment means not caring, but it actually means caring without clinging. It's being deeply invested in your vision while simultaneously being at peace, whether it shows up today or tomorrow. The paradox is that the moment you stop needing something desperately, you become magnetic to it. Desperation repels, detachment attracts. When you free yourself from the energy of struggle, you open space for effortless receiving. What's becoming clear through all of this is that wealth mastery isn't about doing more things. It's about being in a different state. The fisherman didn't need new nets or a bigger boat. He needed to stop fighting the river and start dancing with it. You don't need more strategies or techniques or hustle. You need to find your alignment with the current that's been flowing all along, waiting for you to stop resisting it. Drop "I'm aligning with the flow" in the comments if this is shifting something fundamental in how you see wealth. Once you understand alignment, a whole new dimension of wealth. Consciousness opens up that most people remain completely blind to their entire lives. Because here's what nobody tells you. The universe is constantly communicating with you about money, guiding you toward opportunities, warning you away from dead ends, nudging you in directions that could transform your financial reality. But these communications don't come through email notifications or text messages. They come as whispers, subtle sensations, quiet knowings that get drowned out by the noise of everyday life. Think about a shepherdess who could sense approaching storms long before anyone else noticed the slightest change in weather. While others saw clear skies, she felt tingles along her skin, heard whispers in her heart, perceived shifts in energy that signaled danger. At first she doubted these sensations, but every single time they proved accurate. Eventually, she learned to trust this invisible guidance system, and it protected everything she cared about. You have this same capability with wealth, but you've been trained to ignore it, to dismiss it as imagination or coincidence. The universe speaks to you constantly through channels far more refined than words. That quickening of your pulse when you meet someone unexpected. That recurring symbol you keep seeing everywhere you look. that persistent thought that surfaces during quiet moments, the one that won't leave you alone no matter how many times you try to dismiss it as impractical. These aren't random occurrences. They're breadcrumbs on a trail leading you toward your next level of abundance. But because they're subtle, because they don't announce themselves with trumpets and fanfare, most people walk right past them without a second glance. The real challenge isn't that guidance isn't there, it's that you're listening to the wrong voices. See, there are three distinct voices competing for your attention when it comes to financial decisions, and only one of them is actually connected to your highest prosperity. The first voice is your ego, and it speaks in urgent demands and fearful warnings. It's the voice that says you need to grab this opportunity right now before it disappears, or that you should be terrified because you're running out of time. The ego operates from survival mode, always in crisis, always in panic. It mistakes urgency for importance and fear for wisdom. Then there's society's voice, which echoes with endless shoulds and conventional wisdom. You should get a stable job. You should follow this proven path. You should play it safe and stop dreaming so big. This is the voice of collective programming, the accumulated beliefs of generations who played small, who settled, who never questioned whether there might be another way. It sounds authoritative because it's backed by the weight of majority opinion. But majority opinion has never created extraordinary wealth or breakthrough success. The third voice is completely different in quality. It's the whisper of authentic abundance, and it comes through intuitive knowing rather than logical analysis. It speaks through synchronistic encounters that seem too perfectly timed to be coincidence. It leaves lingering impressions in your dreams that carry a sense of possibility you can't quite shake. This voice doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it simply knows, and it waits patiently for you to quiet down enough to hear it. Learning to distinguish between these voices is one of the most valuable skills you can develop for financial transformation. The ego's voice creates anxiety in your body. Society's voice creates conformity and limitation, but authentic abundance creates expansion, excitement, a sense of rightness even when the path it's showing you makes no logical sense. The problem is that most people have been conditioned to ignore that third voice entirely. They've learned to trust only what's logical, what's proven, what everyone else is doing. And in doing so, they've disconnected from the most powerful guidance system they possess. What's emerging now is a picture of wealth consciousness that's far more sophisticated than simple positive thinking or manifestation techniques. You're not just trying to think better thoughts. You're learning to perceive reality at a deeper level, to tune into frequencies of information that have always been broadcasting but that you've never known how to receive. The shepherdess didn't create the storm warnings. She simply developed the sensitivity to perceive what was already there. Your financial guidance works the same way. Write, "I'm learning to listen," if you're recognizing that you might have been ignoring these whispers your whole life. Learning to listen to those whispers is crucial. But there's something even more fundamental happening beneath the surface of your financial life that most people never examine. You see, you're not just living your financial reality. You're telling a story about it, and that story is actively creating what you experience. Every single thought you think about money, every word you speak about your finances, every belief you hold about what's possible for you, these are all chapters in a narrative that's writing itself into physical form with absolute precision. Your current financial situation, whatever it looks like right now, is the perfect manifestation of the story you've been telling. And here's where this gets really interesting. Every money story contains the same four fundamental elements that any compelling narrative has. There's the character, which is the role you've assigned yourself in relationship to wealth. Are you the struggling artist, the responsible saver who never gets ahead, the unlucky one who always misses opportunities, the hustler who has to fight for every dollar? That character identity you've adopted is running the show behind the scenes, dictating your decisions and filtering your perception of what's available to you. Then, there's the setting, which is the financial environment you've created through your expectations and assumptions. Some people live in a story where the setting is hostile and scarce, where the economy is always against them, where opportunities only go to other people. Others inhabit a setting rich with possibility, where helpful people appear at the right time, where resources flow easily. Same physical world, completely different experiential reality, all because of the setting they've written. Into their money story, the conflict is where most people get stuck on repeat. It's those challenges with finances that seem to keep showing up no matter what you do. The unexpected expenses that always derail your progress. The promotions that go to someone else. The business ideas that never quite take off. The debt that keeps regenerating no matter how much you pay down. These recurring patterns aren't bad luck or cosmic punishment. They're plot points in a story that keeps looping because you haven't changed the underlying narrative creating them. And finally, there's the resolution, which is your vision of how this whole money story ultimately ends. Some people can't even imagine a positive resolution. Their story just trails off into vague worry about the future. Others have a clear vision of financial freedom, but it's always off in the distance, always someday but not today. The resolution you hold in your consciousness is like a magnet pulling your entire life toward that outcome, whether it's one you actually want or one you're creating by default. Now here's the revelation that changes everything. None of this is fixed. You're not trapped in the story you've been telling. Stories can be rewritten, and when you change the narrative, the physical reality must shift to match it, because reality is always following consciousness, not the other way around. There's ancient wisdom about scribes who would literally rewrite family chronicles, removing the curses and limitations that had been passed down through generations. They understood something profound. History isn't set in stone. It's more fluid than we've been taught, especially when it comes to inherited beliefs and patterns. You can do this same rewriting process with your financial story. Start by getting brutally honest about the story you're currently living. Write it down exactly as it is. Don't sugarcoat it. Include every limiting belief, every recurring struggle, every fear about money that dominates your thoughts. Get it all out on paper where you can see it clearly for the first time. This act alone is powerful because it removes these patterns from the shadows of your unconscious and brings them into the light of awareness. Then comes the ceremonial part, and ceremony matters because it signals to your deeper mind that something significant is shifting. Take that story you wrote and begin transforming it. Where you see limitations, write opportunities. Where fear dominates, replace it with wisdom. Where struggles persist, reveal the strength and resources you actually possess. This isn't about lying to yourself or creating fantasy. It's about authoring a new narrative that aligns with the frequency of abundance rather than scarcity. And then you read this new story daily for 21 days, long enough for the new neural pathways to form, for the new identity to take root, for your subconscious to begin accepting this revised narrative as the new operating system. What's happening here goes beyond simple positive thinking. You're literally reprogramming the core story that's been running your financial life, often without your conscious awareness. And when that story changes at the foundational level, everything built on top of it must reorganize itself accordingly. Put "I'm rewriting my story" in the comments if you're ready to take authorship of your financial narrative. Rewriting your story is powerful, but there's one element that acts as an accelerant to this entire transformation process, something that literally transmutes your consciousness from one state to another. And it's so simple that most people completely overlook it while chasing more complicated strategies. I'm talking about gratitude, but not the shallow kind where you force yourself to say thank you for things you resent. I'm talking about authentic appreciation that shifts your entire energetic signature in an instant. Gratitude is the true philosopher's stone. You know that legendary substance alchemists spent lifetimes searching for, the one that could turn lead into gold. They were looking in the wrong place. The real transmutation happens in consciousness, and gratitude is the catalyst. The moment you enter genuine appreciation, your frequency automatically aligns with prosperity. Not because you're manipulating the universe, but because gratitude and abundance exist on the same wavelength. You literally cannot feel authentic gratitude and scarcity at the same time. They're mutually exclusive states. But here's where most people miss the deeper levels of this practice. They think gratitude is just about being thankful for what you have. And that's only the surface. Yes, appreciating your current blessings matters enormously. When you recognize the wealth that already exists in your life, even if it doesn't look like the number you want in your bank account, you're sending a signal that says, I see abundance when it's present. And the universe responds by amplifying what you're acknowledging. But there's a second level that fewer people understand: gratitude for what you don't have. This sounds paradoxical until you realize that every period of lack, every challenge, every moment where resources seemed scarce was actually preparing you, strengthening you, teaching you lessons you couldn't have learned any other way. Those difficult times weren't punishments, they were initiations. When you can look back at your struggles with genuine appreciation for how they shaped you, you complete the energetic cycle and free up massive amounts of power that was locked in resentment and victimhood. And then there's the third level, which is where real mastery emerges. Gratitude for what exists in energetic form but hasn't materialized yet. This is feeling thankful for the abundance that's already moving toward you through the quantum field, even though you can't see physical evidence of it. This level of gratitude is actually a form of powerful manifestation because you're aligning with the reality of what's coming before it arrives, which accelerates its arrival. But even with all this understanding about frequency and gratitude and rewriting your story, there's still one fundamental factor that determines how much wealth can actually flow into your life. And this one cuts deeper than anything we've talked about so far because it's about how you see yourself at the very core of your being. Imagine a merchant who discovered an unusual mirror that didn't show his physical appearance. Instead, it revealed his heart's self-image, the version of himself that lived in his deepest consciousness. Some days when he looked, he saw a beggar staring back despite his fine clothes. Other days, he saw a king despite modest circumstances. That mirror was showing him the truth that most people never face. Your financial reality isn't reflecting your education, your effort, or your circumstances. It's reflecting your beliefs about your own worth. This is the hidden factor that governs everything else we've discussed. The universe operates with mathematical precision, and it cannot deliver to you what you secretly believe lies beyond your deservingness. You might consciously say you want wealth, but if your unconscious identity is, I'm not the kind of person who has money, or people like me don't get rich, or I'm not worthy of that level of abundance, then no amount of strategy or technique will override that core belief. Your sense of worth acts like a thermostat, and when external circumstances start to exceed your internal worth setting, you'll unconsciously sabotage to bring things back to the level you believe you deserve. This is why some lottery winners end up broke within years. The money exceeded their worth thermostat, so their unconscious mind found ways to restore equilibrium at the level they were comfortable with. It's also why people who lose everything but maintain their internal wealth consciousness always rebuild. The external circumstances were just temporary, the internal worth setting remained intact, and reality reorganized itself to match. Write, I am worthy, in the comments, If you're recognizing that your worth beliefs might have been the invisible ceiling all along. Understanding that worthiness is the invisible ceiling is huge. But here's where this gets even more liberating. That sense of unworthiness you might be carrying right now, it's not actually yours. It's borrowed. You weren't born believing you didn't deserve abundance. Watch a toddler sometime. They reach for what they want with complete entitlement, with zero question about whether they're worthy of receiving it. That natural state of deserving was your original programming before the world started layering its limitations onto you. Your current sense of financial worthiness got formed through a mixture of childhood experiences, religious teachings that maybe implied money was somehow unspiritual, societal messages about who deserves wealth and who doesn't, and past struggles that seem to confirm your fears about not being enough. But here's the critical understanding that changes everything. These influences, as powerful as they feel, hold absolutely no permanent authority over you. They were installed, which means they can be uninstalled. They were learned, which means they can be unlearned. Worthiness isn't something you need to earn through achievement or prove through sacrifice. It's something you remember. It's your natural state, the frequency you were born into before anyone convinced you otherwise. Before time began, before you had any accomplishments or failures to your name, you were already worthy of infinite abundance. That's not motivational speaking. That's recognizing the fundamental truth of your existence. You are not trying to become worthy. You are uncovering the worthiness that's always been there beneath the layers of false conditioning. This shift from earning to remembering is subtle, but absolutely transformative. When you're trying to earn worthiness, you're in a perpetual state of not enough, always striving, always proving, never arriving. But when you remember worthiness as your birthright, you relax into a completely different relationship with money. You stop chasing it desperately and start allowing it to flow naturally because you're no longer operating from the frequency of deprivation. Now, even with this foundation of worthiness reclaimed and your frequency aligned, there's still one more dimension to understand about how wealth actually moves through your life. Because abundance doesn't flow constantly like a faucet left open. It moves in rhythms, in cycles, in seasons. And most people create massive financial friction by not understanding or respecting these natural patterns. Think about a vineyard owner who discovered ancient wisdom about timing. He learned to read the moon's cycles, planting when it waxed, and pruning when it waned. He understood that there were seasons for different activities, and fighting against these natural rhythms only created struggle and poor results. When he aligned his work with nature's timing, his harvests became abundant without the exhausting effort he'd been putting in before. Your financial life operates on the exact same principle. There are times for planting seeds, for initiating new ventures, for taking bold action. There are times for tending what you've started, nurturing and maintaining. There are times for harvest, when opportunities ripen and money flows in. And there are times for rest, for integration, for allowing the field to lie fallow so it can regenerate for the next cycle. Each phase is essential. Each has its own purpose and wisdom. The problem is that our culture has taught us to operate in constant expansion mode, always pushing for growth, always doing more, always in harvest season mentally, even when we're actually in a planting or resting phase. This creates enormous internal conflict and resistance. You're trying to reap when you should be sowing, or you're resting when the harvest is ready, and then wondering why abundance isn't flowing. When you resist the natural cycles, you create discord in your relationship with money. You burn out during phases that should be about strategic preparation. You miss opportunities during times ripe for action because you're exhausted from refusing to rest. But when you learn to flow with these rhythms, to recognize which season you're in and honor what that season requires, wealth multiplies effortlessly because you're working with universal law instead of against it. Type I honor the seasons in the comments. If you're recognizing that you might have been fighting against natural cycles instead of flowing with them. Honoring the seasons is crucial, but there's something even more fundamental that most people never consider. They treat money like it's an inanimate object, just paper and metal and numbers on screens. But what if that's the biggest misconception of all? What if money is actually alive in ways we haven't been taught to recognize? Stay with me on this because it might sound strange at first, but the people who have truly mastered wealth understand something that others don't. Money exists as conscious energy. It's not just a tool or a resource. It's a living force that responds to how you treat it, how you think about it, how you relate to it. And just like any relationship, it requires certain agreements to function at its highest level. Think of it as entering into a sacred contract, a partnership with money itself. This isn't some abstract metaphor. When you shift your relationship with money from transactional to relational, from mechanical to conscious, everything changes. The first aspect of this partnership is respect. Most people either worship money or despise it, but neither extreme creates healthy flow. Respect means honoring money for what it represents, energy, freedom, possibility, without making it your god or your enemy. Then there's appropriate value exchange, which means ensuring that what you give and what you receive maintain balance. When you overcharge, you create karmic debt. When you undervalue yourself, you block abundance. The universe operates on equilibrium, and your financial transactions need to reflect fair exchange for this partnership to thrive. Purposeful use is about directing money toward meaningful creation rather than mindless consumption. Money responds to intention. When you use it consciously with clear purpose aligned with your values, it multiplies. When you waste it unconsciously, it withdraws. Gratitude, which we've already covered, strengthens your bond with money every time you acknowledge its presence in your life. Integrity means maintaining clarity and honesty in all financial dealings. Every time you compromise your integrity for money, you damage the relationship and create blocks in future flow. Circulation keeps wealth's energy moving freely rather than stagnant. And stewardship means accepting responsibility for wise administration of whatever abundance comes through your hands. Recognizing that you're a temporary custodian of resources that will eventually flow elsewhere. When you consciously establish this partnership with money as living energy rather than dead currency, the entire game changes. You're no longer just trying to get more of something. You're cultivating a relationship with a force that wants to work with you when treated with consciousness and respect. But even this partnership exists within a larger context, and this is where we get to the heart of manifestation itself. Your mind isn't just where you think thoughts about money, it's the actual terrain where financial reality is grown. Imagine a gardener who inherited a peculiar piece of land where plants didn't respond to traditional care. They responded to his thoughts. Where he imagined abundance with clear focus and positive emotion, flowers bloomed in profusion. Where doubt and worry clouded his mind, the soil remained barren no matter how much water and fertilizer he applied. Your mind operates exactly like this garden. Every thought you plant about wealth takes root in the fertile soil of consciousness and grows into material reality. The universe doesn't distinguish between thoughts you want to manifest and thoughts you fear manifesting. It just grows whatever you plant with emotional energy and consistent attention. That worry about not having enough? You're watering those seeds daily. That excitement about financial freedom? If you're truly feeling it consistently, those seeds are growing too. Most people have unconsciously planted gardens full of weeds, limiting beliefs, fearful projections, inherited scarcity patterns, and then they wonder why abundance doesn't bloom. They're literally cultivating poverty consciousness and expecting wealth to grow from it. The transformation comes when you realize you're the gardener. You get to choose what you plant. You get to decide what receives your attention and emotional energy. You get to weed out the thoughts that don't serve your vision and nurture the ones that do. Comment, "I am the gardener," if this metaphor is helping you see your role in creating financial reality differently. Once you understand that you're the gardener of your financial reality, the question becomes, how do you actually cultivate this garden with mastery? Because it's one thing to know the principle, and it's another thing entirely to practice it with the precision that creates extraordinary results. The difference between someone who dabbles in manifestation and someone who consistently creates wealth comes down to these refined practices that separate casual interest from genuine transformation. As a master gardener of your mind, you have to become incredibly selective about the thought seeds you plant. Not every idea that crosses your mind deserves to be given soil and water and attention. You wouldn't plant weeds intentionally in a physical garden, yet most people do this mentally all day long. They entertain thoughts of limitation, give energy to fears about money, replay stories of past financial failures. Each of these is a seed being planted in the fertile ground of consciousness. The master gardener learns to recognize thought seeds that carry the pure essence of abundance and consciously chooses to cultivate only those. But selection alone isn't enough. You also need to prepare the mental soil through practices like meditation and positive expectation. Just like a physical garden needs nutrient-rich soil, your mind needs to be prepared to receive and grow prosperity consciousness. Meditation clears out the rocks and debris of mental clutter. Positive expectation enriches the soil with the nutrients of optimism and possibility. When your mental environment is properly prepared, even small seeds of intention can grow into massive manifestations. Creating optimal conditions means maintaining consistent focus and emotional warmth around your financial visions. Think about how a greenhouse works. It doesn't just plant seeds and hope for the best. It maintains specific temperature, humidity, and light conditions that optimize growth. Your emotional state is the climate control for your mental garden. When you can stay in feelings of excitement, gratitude, and certainty around your wealth goals, you're creating the perfect conditions for rapid manifestation. But when your emotional climate swings wildly between hope and despair, you're basically giving your plants tropical heat one day and freezing temperatures the next. Nothing can grow in that instability, and perhaps most importantly, you need to guard your growing manifestations from the destructive pests of doubt, fear, and skepticism. These are the insects and diseases of the mental garden, and they're everywhere. Other people's limiting beliefs, your own conditioned responses, the voice of realistic thinking that's really just disguised fear. A master gardener doesn't let these pests destroy what's being cultivated. They protect their vision fiercely, not by being defensive or closed-minded, but by maintaining such strong certainty that negative influences simply can't take root. But here's what's interesting about doubt specifically, because most people think doubt is their enemy. In this process, they believe that if they could just eliminate all doubt, then manifestation would be easy. But there's an ancient understanding about doubt that completely reframes its role in your journey. An alchemist's apprentice spent years watching his master try to turn lead into gold, and one day he realized something profound. The real alchemy wasn't happening in the laboratory with metals, it was happening in consciousness itself. And doubt wasn't the obstacle to transformation, it was actually the resistance necessary for developing unshakable faith. Think about how muscles grow. They don't get stronger from rest alone. They need resistance, weight pushing against them, challenges that create micro-tears that heal back stronger. Your faith in abundance works the same way. Doubt provides the resistance that forces your certainty to develop depth and power. When you encounter doubt and move through it consciously rather than being stopped by it, you emerge with a level of knowing that can't be shaken. The doubt you experience about money actually exists at different depths, and each level is a doorway to deeper understanding. The surface doubts are practical concerns. How will I pay this bill? Where will the money come from? These are invitations to develop practical solutions and skills. Deeper are the limiting beliefs you've inherited or developed. Working through these strengthens your ability to question conditioning. Even deeper is unconscious programming, running beneath your awareness. When this surfaces as doubt, it's actually an opportunity to bring shadow material into light. And at the deepest level is spiritual questioning about the very nature of abundance and your relationship to it, which can lead to profound awakening when engaged with courage. Put "doubt is my teacher" in the comments if you're seeing doubt differently now. When you shift your relationship with doubt from enemy to teacher, you unlock a level of precision in your manifestation practice that most people never access. Because now you're not just hoping for abundance or wishing for wealth. You're operating with the focused intention of an archer who's mastered their craft to the point where hitting the target becomes inevitable. Think about a master archer for a moment. Before they even draw the bow, something profound happens. They don't just aim at the target, they merge with it. In their consciousness, the separation between archer and target dissolves. They've already hit the bullseye in their mind, in their energy field, in their entire being. The physical release of the arrow is just a formality, the material world catching up to what's already happened in consciousness. This is exactly how financial magnetism works when you understand its true mechanics. The precision required for consistent wealth manifestation follows a specific sequence, but it's not mechanical. It's energetic. First comes absolute clarity about what you're calling in. Vague intentions create vague results. When you can define your financial target so precisely that you could touch it in your mind's eye, smell it, feel it, experience it with all your senses, you've created a magnetic beacon in the quantum field that money moves toward. Then you need to vibrate emotionally with that desired outcome as though it already exists. This isn't fake it till you make it. This is genuine resonance with the frequency of your vision. When you can feel the relief, the excitement, the gratitude of having what you're calling in, you create an electromagnetic pull that's absolutely irresistible. Most people skip this step or do it superficially, wondering why their manifestations take forever or never arrive. They're defining targets without generating the magnetic charge that actually draws those targets into physical form. The third element is where a lot of people stumble because it seems contradictory. You need to release all attachment to the specific path your manifestation takes. You can be crystal clear about the what while remaining completely open about the how. When you insist money must come through this particular job, this specific investment, this one opportunity, you're actually limiting the universe's ability to deliver. But when you stay focused on the outcome, while trusting that infinite pathways exist to get you there, you remove the blocks your own rigidity was creating. Maintaining steady focus is the fourth key. Your attention is the water and sunlight for your manifestation. Whatever you consistently focus on with emotional energy grows. But most people scatter their focus, giving energy to their vision one day and their fears the next, wondering why nothing solidifies. The archer doesn't waver. Their gaze stays locked on the target with unwavering commitment. Your financial focus needs the same steadiness. And finally, there's recognizing the perfect timing for release. Just like the archer knows the exact moment to let the arrow fly, you need to develop sensitivity to when your intention is ripe for manifestation. Sometimes holding the vision longer builds power. Sometimes immediate action is required. This timing isn't something you calculate logically. It's something you feel when you're properly attuned. But even this level of precision operates within a larger framework that defies everything our rational minds want to believe about how reality works. Because wealth manifestation doesn't actually follow the gradual linear progression we've been taught to expect. It happens through quantum leaps, through discontinuous jumps that transcend ordinary time and space. There's a story about a village elder who demonstrated this principle in a way that shattered everyone's understanding of what's possible. Standing at the edge of a great chasm, she simply stepped forward into empty space. And as her foot descended, solid ground materialized beneath it. Another step, another appearance of earth. Where there had been nothing, she walked across that void on ground that existed only in the moment of her absolute faith, teaching everyone watching that reality responds not to gradual effort, but to complete conviction. Your wealth consciousness works the same way. You're standing at the edge of your current financial reality, looking across at the abundance you desire. And there's this apparent gap between here and there. Your logical mind wants to build a bridge slowly, one plank at a time, taking years to cross. But quantum manifestation doesn't work like that. When your entire being makes the leap in consciousness, when you fully inhabit the state of having what you desire before any physical evidence appears, the universe must respond by collapsing that gap instantly. Right, I'm ready to leap if this is stirring something in you about taking that quantum jump in faith. The quantum leap isn't random magic. It follows a specific sequence that, when understood and applied, allows you to consciously make these discontinuous jumps in financial reality. And the first phase is perhaps the most challenging for most people because it requires something that goes against every instinct you've developed around money. You need to acknowledge your present position without any judgment whatsoever. Not denial, not sugarcoating, not pretending things are different than they are. Just honest, neutral observation of where you stand financially right now. Most people skip this step because they're either in denial about their situation or they're drowning in shame and judgment about it. But you can't leap from a position you're refusing to acknowledge. The quantum jump requires you to plant your feet firmly in current reality with complete acceptance before you can shift dimensions. This isn't resignation. It's radical honesty that creates the stable launching point for transformation. From that grounded place, the second phase asks you to hold an unwavering vision of your desired state with such vivid clarity that it feels more real than your current circumstances. This is where most people's practice falls apart. They can visualize for a few minutes, but then doubt creeps back in. They can imagine wealth on Monday, but by Wednesday, they're back in fear. The quantum leap requires sustained vision, the kind of focus that doesn't waver regardless of what external reality is showing you. You're essentially living in two realities simultaneously, the one that is and the one that's becoming. Then comes the most mystical phase, where you face the apparent void between these two states. There's this gap, this space that looks empty, that seems impossible to cross. Your logical mind sees the distance between broke and abundant, between struggling and thriving, and it calculates all the reasons why the leap can't happen. But here's the revelation that changes everything. That gap exists only in conventional perception. In quantum reality, in the field of infinite possibility, there is no distance. The void is an illusion created by linear thinking. When you truly understand this, when you feel it in your bones, the fear of the leap dissolves because you realize there's nothing to fall into. And finally, the fourth phase is the actual jump itself. It's making the conscious choice to occupy your new reality fully, allowing a complete shift in your being before any external proof appears. This is where faith becomes tangible. You're not waiting for circumstances to change before you embody wealth consciousness. You're embodying wealth consciousness and trusting that circumstances must reorganize themselves to match. This feels dangerous to the ego because you're investing everything in something invisible. But it's the only way the quantum leap actually happens. Now, understanding these phases intellectually is valuable, but there's something practical you need to know about creating the conditions that support this kind of transformation. Your physical environment isn't separate from your consciousness, it's an extension of it, and it powerfully influences your ability to make and maintain these quantum leaps in wealth frequency. Imagine someone discovering a hidden temple where time seemed to stand still and the very air vibrated with prosperity's essence. The moment they stepped inside, their entire energy field shifted. That space had been designed, consciously or unconsciously, to elevate anyone who entered it into abundance. Consciousness. You might not have a literal temple, but you can create sacred space in your own environment that serves the exact same function. Every room you occupy, every corner of your home, every object within your visual field is either supporting your wealth frequency or dragging it down. Most people live in environments that constantly remind them of struggle, lack, limitation, clutter that creates mental chaos, objects that carry negative associations, spaces that feel heavy or stagnant. And then they wonder why prosperity feels so difficult to maintain. Your external world is continuously programming your internal state, often without your conscious awareness. The transformation happens when you intentionally design your environment to amplify abundance consciousness. This starts with purification, clearing out everything that doesn't resonate with your highest vision. Then you introduce sacred objects that anchor specific prosperity frequencies. You establish rituals that activate these spaces with intention, and you create boundaries, both physical and energetic, that protect your cultivated abundance field from dilution. Comment, "My space is sacred," if you're recognizing that your environment might be working against your wealth frequency. Creating sacred space in your environment is powerful, but there's something even more immediate that's shaping your financial reality every single moment, and most people are completely unconscious of it. I'm talking about the words you use when you speak about money. Not just what you say to others, but the constant internal dialogue running in your mind about your finances. These aren't just neutral descriptions of reality. They're incantations, literal spells that open or seal the channels through which abundance can flow to you. There was a merchant in ancient times who discovered a text written in shimmering ink that revealed a truth most people never grasp. Words themselves carry vibrational frequencies. Every statement you make about money creates an energetic blueprint, and the universe, which operates with mathematical precision, faithfully manifests that blueprint into your physical experience. When you say, "I can't afford that," you're not just stating a fact. You're issuing a command to the universe that gets encoded into your reality. When you declare, "Money is tight," you're literally tightening the flow of abundance into your life. Most people speak about money in ways that guarantee scarcity without even realizing what they're doing. The phrases are so common, so socially acceptable, that they slip out automatically. "I'm broke. I'll never get ahead." Money doesn't grow on trees. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. Each of these statements is a seed being planted in the garden of your consciousness, and every time you speak or think them, you're watering those seeds of limitation. The transformation begins when you become conscious of this alchemy and start deliberately choosing language that aligns with abundance rather than lack. This doesn't mean lying about your circumstances or using fake positivity. It means shifting from charged scarcity language to neutral or elevated financial speech. Instead of "I can't afford it," try "I'm choosing to allocate my resources differently right now." Instead of "I'm broke," acknowledge "I'm in a transition phase financially." These might seem like small semantic changes, but the energetic difference is massive. And as you become more sophisticated in this practice, you start activating high-frequency abundance terminology that doesn't just describe reality, but actually calls new reality into being. Phrases like, "Money flows to me easily," "I'm a magnet for financial opportunities," "Wealth is my natural state." When spoken with genuine feeling and consistent repetition, these words literally reprogram your subconscious and broadcast a completely different signal into the quantum field. But even as you're refining your language and purifying your environment, there's an invisible architecture governing your financial life that most people never perceive. Imagine someone who inherited unusual spectacles that revealed something extraordinary when worn. Suddenly, golden threads of light became visible, connecting every person, every circumstance, every event in an intricate web of relationship. And along these glowing pathways, wealth and opportunity flowed in patterns that seemed random to normal perception, but were perfectly logical when you could see the web itself. This is closer to how reality actually operates than most people understand. Your prosperity doesn't move through empty space randomly finding you. It travels along specific pathways created by your connections, your beliefs, your past actions, and your spiritual alignments. There's a whole network of invisible threads determining what opportunities can reach you and which ones remain forever out of your awareness. Your human connections form the most obvious network. Every person you know carries the potential to be a channel for abundance, not because they'll necessarily give you money directly, but because relationships create energetic pathways through which opportunities flow. The person you helped 5 years ago might know someone who has exactly what you need right now. But if that relational thread doesn't exist, that pathway remains closed. Your past actions create another layer of this web, forming what some traditions call karma, but what's really just energetic cause and effect. Every generous act, every integrity-based decision, every moment you chose courage over fear has created threads connecting you to future abundance. And simultaneously, every manipulation, every corner cut, every time you acted from pure selfishness has created tangles in the web that block flow. Your belief systems act as filters on these networks, determining which threads light up and which stay dark. If you believe wealthy people are corrupt, you've just severed most of the threads that could connect you to prosperity. If you believe your background disqualifies you from success, you've dimmed the pathways that could have carried opportunities your way. Your beliefs don't just affect your mindset, they literally alter the architecture of possibility around you. Type, "I see the web," if this perspective on interconnection is revealing something new about how wealth moves. Seeing the web of connections that governs wealth flow is enlightening, but knowing it exists is only half the equation. The real mastery comes in understanding how to navigate this web, how to move through it in ways that amplify abundance rather than create more tangles. And this requires something that our achievement-obsessed culture has almost completely forgotten how to do: the sacred dance between doing and being, between action and surrender. There's a story about a weaver whose hands moved across her loom every day with skill and dedication, yet her creations remained ordinary despite her technical mastery. Then something shifted. She began alternating between periods of focused, intentional work and moments of complete stillness where she did absolutely nothing but sit in receptive awareness. During action phases, her hands moved with precision and purpose. During stillness phases, she simply allowed inspiration to flow through her without grasping at it. And suddenly, her tapestries began carrying a quality that seemed almost magical, drawing people from distant places who couldn't explain why they felt compelled to own her work. What she'd discovered is the fundamental rhythm that governs all manifestation, including financial abundance. There's a masculine principle of creation that involves focused action, strategic planning, directed will, and deliberate effort. This is the energy most people understand because our culture celebrates it. Exclusively. Work harder, push more, make it happen through sheer determination. But there's also a feminine principle that involves receptivity, intuitive wisdom, trusting surrender, and allowing things to unfold in their own timing. And here's what's crucial. You need both. When you overemphasize masculine energy, constantly pushing and forcing and grinding, you create resistance and burnout. You're rowing that boat against the current again, exhausting yourself for diminishing returns. But when you lean too heavily into feminine energy without balancing it with action, you become passive, waiting for the universe to deliver while taking no practical steps. You're floating aimlessly, wondering why your desires never manifest. The wealth mastery exists in the dance between these energies, knowing when to act decisively and when to release completely. When to plan strategically and when to trust your intuition even if it defies logic. When to work with focus and when to rest with faith. This balance prevents both the resistance that comes from too much force and the stagnation that comes from too much passivity. But even as you're learning this dance, there's another capacity developing that takes you to an entirely different level of financial consciousness. Some people seem to have an almost supernatural ability to see opportunities before they materialize, to sense where abundance is about to flow before any logical indicators appear. This isn't magic or special gift, reserved for the chosen few. It's a developed skill of perception that anyone can cultivate. Think about a shepherd who discovered a cave with unusual acoustics, where wind passing through created whispers that somehow revealed information about coming events. Merchant caravans approaching, abundant seasons ahead, opportunities emerging. At first he thought he was imagining it, but every whisper proved accurate. He'd stumbled onto a way of perceiving reality beyond ordinary sensory input, accessing information that existed in the field before it manifested in form. You have access to this same intelligence. The universe is constantly broadcasting information about approaching prosperity, but most people's receivers are tuned to the wrong frequencies. They're stuck in purely logical assessment, evaluating everything through rational analysis alone. This level of perception has its place, but it can only process information that already exists in visible form. It's always responding to the past, never truly perceiving the emerging future. Some people develop pattern recognition, seeing cycles and trends that repeat across time. This is more sophisticated than pure logic, allowing you to anticipate based on historical rhythms. But even this is still working with known data, extrapolating from what's been rather than perceiving what's becoming. The deeper levels are where real wealth foresight emerges. Intuitive knowing is that gut feeling that arises without apparent reason, the sense that you should call a certain person or explore a specific opportunity even though logic argues against it. When you learn to trust and act on these intuitions, you start moving ahead of the visible curve. And at the deepest level is what I call quantum foresight, the ability to perceive opportunities that exist in potential before they've manifested in any physical form. This is seeing possibilities in the quantum field, feeling into futures that haven't yet collapsed into reality, and positioning yourself to be there when they do. Right? I'm developing foresight. If you're recognizing that you might have intuitions about wealth that you've been ignoring. Developing this foresight opens you to a perspective that fundamentally challenges everything you think you know about time and wealth creation. Because here's the mind-bending truth that mystics and quantum physicists are both pointing to from different directions. Time itself isn't what you think. It is. The past, present, and future aren't separate locations on a linear timeline. They're all happening simultaneously in one eternal now. And your consciousness is the organizing principle that determines which version of reality you experience. Your current financial situation isn't just the result of past decisions and actions, though it might look that way from conventional perspective. It's actually a reflection of the consciousness you're maintaining in this present moment. Every thought you're thinking right now about money, every belief you're holding about what's possible, every emotional frequency you're broadcasting is reaching backward and forward through time, influencing what you perceive as your financial history and shaping what manifests as your financial future. This sounds abstract until you really grasp what it means practically. When you shift your awareness right now, when you step into abundance consciousness in this moment, regardless of what your bank account shows, you're not just changing your future. You're literally transforming your relationship with past experiences and rewriting the meaning of events that already occurred. That financial struggle you went through 5 years ago, when viewed through scarcity consciousness, it's evidence of your unworthiness. But when viewed through abundance consciousness, it becomes the perfect preparation for the wealth you're stepping into. Same event, completely different energetic signature, completely different impact on your present reality. The wealthy sage understands that all power exists in the now. You can't change yesterday's decisions in physical form, but you can absolutely change the frequency you're bringing to them, which changes how they influence your current experience. And you can't control tomorrow in concrete terms, but you can shape what emerges by the consciousness you embody today. This is how simultaneous healing of past and creation of future happens through present awareness. But even as you're grasping this timeless perspective, there's something practical and immediate about how wealth actually multiplies once it starts flowing. Most people think accumulation is the key, but there's ancient wisdom about multiplication that reveals something far more powerful. Remember that baker whose small shop filled the morning air with the aroma of fresh bread? He discovered grain that shimmered with otherworldly light and began sharing bread made from it, freely with those in need. And the more he gave, the more his storehouse filled, until his wealth became legendary throughout the land. This demonstrates the first immutable law of multiplication. Giving actually expands wealth through circulation rather than depleting it. The universe operates on spiral dynamics, not linear accounting. When you circulate money with the right consciousness, it doesn't just return to you, it returns multiplied. But this only works when you're giving from genuine abundance awareness, not from obligation or depletion. The second law reveals that multiplication happens through value creation, transforming ordinary resources into extraordinary benefits for others. You're not just moving money around. You're enhancing its value as it passes through your hands, solving problems, creating beauty, generating transformation. This value-added approach creates natural multiplication because you're contributing to the total wealth of the system rather than just extracting from it. Leveraged energy is the third principle, and it's about aligning your efforts with universal flow so that small inputs generate exponentially larger outputs. This is the difference between pushing a boulder uphill and positioning yourself at the top of a mountain where gravity does the work. When you're aligned with how abundance actually wants to move, your actions get multiplied by forces far greater than your individual effort. Compound consciousness, the fourth law, shows how each act of conscious circulation builds upon itself, creating an ever-expanding spiral of abundance. It's not just financial compound interest, it's consciousness compounding, where each aligned choice strengthens your frequency, which attracts more, which strengthens your frequency further, creating acceleration that seems miraculous from outside, but is perfectly natural once you understand the mechanics. And the final law, spiritual overflow, demonstrates that when you give from authentic Abundance rather than sacrifice. The universe must respond with multiplication. It's not negotiable. It's physics at the consciousness level. Comment, abundance multiplies. If you're seeing that multiplication isn't about hoarding, but about conscious circulation, understanding how wealth multiplies is powerful, but there's something even more fundamental that determines whether abundance flows to you with ease or remains perpetually out of reach. Because here's what nobody tells you when you're chasing money. The pursuit itself is often what's blocking you. The desperation to get wealthy, the fixation on the dollars and cents, the constant calculation of how much more you need, all of that energy is actually repelling what you're trying to attract. Real prosperity, the kind that's sustainable and deeply satisfying, doesn't come from chasing wealth. It emerges naturally when you align with something far more powerful, your soul's purpose. Think about that weaver whose tapestries started emanating golden light once he understood that his craft wasn't just about creating beautiful fabric. His true purpose was healing, and when he began weaving that intention into every thread, when he aligned his work with his soul's deepest calling, prosperity flowed to him effortlessly because he was no longer forcing anything. He was simply expressing his authentic nature. This is the golden thread that connects everything we've been talking about. Your soul came here with specific gifts, abilities that flow through you so naturally you might not even recognize them as extraordinary. Your heart carries specific passions, activities that make you lose track of time, that light you up from the inside, and the world has specific needs, problems waiting to be solved, gaps that only your unique combination of gifts can fill. Where these three elements converge, your soul gifts, your heart's passion, and the world's genuine needs, that's where your purpose lives. And that's where effortless prosperity waits for you. Most people miss this convergence entirely because they're too busy trying to fit themselves into careers and business models that promise money but require them to abandon their authentic expression. They look at what's profitable and try to mold themselves to match it, wondering why success feels like such a struggle, why financial abundance comes with a price tag of exhaustion and disconnection. The struggle itself is the signal that you're out of alignment with purpose. But when you discover that intersection point, when you're using your natural gifts in service of something you genuinely care about to meet a real need in the world, money stops being something you chase and becomes something that chases you. Because now you're not just trying to extract value from the marketplace. You're adding genuine value, solving real problems, creating authentic transformation. And the universe rewards that with abundance because you've become a channel for something greater than personal gain. This brings us to perhaps the deepest truth about wealth that very few people ever grasp. Ancient wisdom keepers who studied abundance at the highest levels discovered something profound hidden in weathered scrolls and sacred texts. True wealth isn't measured by how much you accumulate. It's measured by your capacity to transform material resources into spiritual evolution, both for yourself and for others. This is the ultimate alchemy, far beyond turning lead into gold. It's about taking money, which is condensed energy, and transmuting it through consciousness into forces that elevate humanity. This transformation happens through stages that begin with gratitude for resources you've been given. Then stewardship, recognizing yourself as a temporary custodian rather than ultimate owner. Discernment develops as you learn to direct wealth toward its highest use. Detachment emerges when you stop identifying with your net worth. Service becomes the natural expression of overflow. Wisdom deepens as you understand money's true nature. And finally, transcendence, where currency becomes pure love in action, where every financial transaction carries intention to uplift and transform. When you reach this level of consciousness, you're no longer using money for just personal comfort or security. You're wielding it as an instrument of evolution, yours and everyone it touches. This is where wealth becomes sacred, where prosperity serves purpose, where abundance fulfills its deepest potential. Type purpose over profit in the comments if you're feeling called to align your financial life with something deeper than just accumulation. When you start seeing wealth as an instrument of spiritual evolution rather than just personal accumulation, something profound shifts in your entire energetic structure. You're no longer operating from the small self, trying to grab its piece of the pie. You're becoming a conscious channel through which universal abundance flows for the benefit of all. But this level of consciousness doesn't just happen in your mind. It requires an actual architecture, an internal structure that can hold and amplify this frequency. There's a story about someone who wanted to build a magnificent temple but had no resources to do so. While others would have given up or waited for circumstances to change, this person understood something crucial. They built the temple first in consciousness, constructing every pillar, every sacred vessel, every element in such vivid detail within their awareness that they could walk through its halls in meditation. And as this inner temple became more real, more solid in the landscape of consciousness, the physical world began responding. Resources appeared, helpers arrived, the impossible became inevitable. Your external financial reality is always, without exception, mirroring the inner temple of your prosperity consciousness. When your internal structure is weak, fragmented, or non-existent, your outer wealth reflects that instability. But when you consciously construct a solid foundation of abundance awareness, when you build chambers of worthiness and expectation and gratitude in the architecture of your mind, physical reality has no choice but to mirror that structure back to you. This inner temple gets activated and maintained through specific practices that might seem esoteric but are actually quite practical. Sacred geometry creates order that aligns with universal principles, bringing harmony to chaotic money energy. Elemental balance ensures all aspects of prosperity consciousness are represented. Earth for grounding, air for vision, fire for transformation, water for flow. Symbolic presence means choosing specific objects and images that anchor wealth frequency in your awareness. Energetic clearance removes the accumulated debris of limiting beliefs and stagnant patterns, and ritual maintenance keeps this inner temple vibrant through consistent practice rather than letting it fall into neglect. When you understand that you're literally the architect of your wealth consciousness, that you're building an internal structure that determines external manifestation, you stop being a victim of circumstances and become a creator of reality. Every meditation is laying another stone. Every aligned thought is reinforcing a pillar. Every practice is consecrating space for greater abundance to inhabit. But even with all this understanding about frequency and consciousness and internal architecture, there's one final truth that ties everything together and reveals why abundance is actually your natural state rather than something you need to struggle for. Imagine a traveler dying of thirst in the desert, convinced there's no water anywhere, resigned to their fate, then discovering a spring that's been flowing ceaselessly since before human memory, pure and abundant and infinite, hidden just beneath the surface of what appeared to be barren land. This is the revelation that changes everything about your relationship with money. All material wealth, every dollar that has ever existed or will ever exist, flows from an infinite spiritual source that knows absolutely no depletion, no scarcity, no limitation. This source is not somewhere far away that you need to access through complex rituals. It's the very ground of being itself, the fundamental reality underlying all physical manifestation. Your task has never been to generate abundance from nothing. That's impossible and exhausting, which is why the grind and hustle approach leads to burnout. Your only task is opening yourself to what already exists in limitless supply. Think about the air you're breathing right now. You don't create it. You don't earn it. You don't compete for it. You simply open your lungs and receive what's infinitely available. Wealth operates on the exact same principle when you understand its true nature. Right. I open to infinite supply if this understanding is dissolving the belief in scarcity that's been limiting your abundance. The moment you truly grasp that abundance is infinite and always available, that your only work is opening to receive rather than straining to create, everything about your financial journey transforms. You stop swimming against the current and start flowing with it. You stop chasing money and start allowing it to find you. You stop believing in scarcity and start remembering the truth of limitless supply. If you've made it this far in this video, that's not an accident. You were meant to hear this message. Your consciousness was ready for this frequency shift, and something in you recognized the truth beneath these words, even if your logical mind struggled with the concepts. That recognition is the first stirring of awakening to your natural state of abundance. I create content like this because I believe this understanding needs to reach as many people as possible. The old paradigm of struggle and scarcity has caused so much unnecessary suffering, and there's a new way emerging for those willing to see it. If this resonated with you, if something shifted inside as you listened, consider subscribing to this channel so you don't miss the deeper teachings I'll be sharing. This is just the beginning of what's possible when you align with wealth frequency. And leave a comment below saying, "This message found me, so I know you were here, so I know this reached you at exactly the right moment." Your comment also helps this video reach others who need to hear it, creating ripples of abundance consciousness across the world. If you found value in what we explored today, hit that like button. It's a small gesture that means a lot and helps me understand what's truly serving you on this journey. There's another video right here that goes even deeper into practical techniques for shifting your frequency and manifesting specific financial goals. It's the perfect next step after everything we've covered today. Click and continue with me there, because your transformation is just beginning, and I want to walk this path with you.